My name is Dylan Adderson, and I'm 17 years old. And this is the story of Tony. It all started on Christmas morning of 2018. I remember that year for Christmas, the only thing I asked for was a cactus. I never grew up with a cactus. I never knew what it was like to own a cactus. All the other kids had cacti. I didn't know what it was like. I wanted to have my experience with a cactus. And I remember opening my last present on Christmas morning and looking inside the box and seeing a cactus. That was Tony. From the very first moment I saw him, I knew that he was going to be my best friend. Tony and I were inseparable. That whole morning we ate together, we drank together, we played together. I showed off my cactus to all the neighbors. It was the best Christmas ever. And after Christmas was over, I took him home with me, and I put him outside. He looked perfect outside in my backyard. It was about a week after I got Tony that my uncle and I decided to go out for lunch. And I wanted to bring Tony with me. I wanted him to experience his first drive-through. And so, I took Tony with me. I put him in the back seat. We had a great time. We really did. But then it happened. So we arrived back home, and I got out of the car, and my uncle got out of the car as well, and we both closed our doors. And then I went to open the back seat, the back door, because Tony was back there, and I went to open it and it was locked. I was like, what am I gonna do? And so I asked my uncle, I'm like, hey, can you unlock the back door? Because Tony's still back there. And you won't believe what he said. He looked at me and he said, I lost the keys. And I looked back at him, I'm like, We were just driving the car a second ago. You just had the keys. But he kept saying he just lost them. He didn't know what happened. I was furious. Tony was stuck in the back seat. He still had his lid on. He couldn't breathe. He had no oxygen. I had to get him out. He was stuck in the car with his lid on for a whole week. I will never forgive my uncle for what he did. Because what he did was the beginning
of a downward spiral.
So, after we got Tony out of the car, I took his lid off, I put him outside, I watered him, made sure he was doing good. I was just really worried. You know, what happens to a cactus when it doesn't have oxygen for a whole week? Well, I don't know. About a week after we got Tony out of the car, and he was outside for about a week later, we just had, out of nowhere, a constant rain. It rained for 4-5 days straight, non-stop. And at first I was like, well, maybe this will be good for Tony, you know? Refreshing for him to have the rain fall down into his little jar. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute. He's in a jar. And it's raining. A lot of rain. His jar's gonna flood. And when I realized this, it was too late. I rushed outside. I saw Tony. I looked in his jar. And sure enough, water everywhere. He was flooded for at least 24 hours. That time, it was my fault. And I hate myself for that. Another thing to note is that throughout these 4 or 5 days of constant rain, not only was he getting too much water, but he was also lacking sun. Because there was just constant clouds. There was no sun. And it was around this time that I started to notice weird color change in Tony. Part of his skin was starting to rot. After the rain stopped, I began to notice that Tony was not only dying, but other animals knew that he was dying as well. I caught a lizard right next to Tony, about to eat him. Tony wasn't even dead yet, and that disgusting lizard wanted to eat him. And the next day, there was a bird right next to Tony, staring him down. So I run out there and I scare the bird off. And it's at this point that I realize that all these other animals are going to try and eat Tony. This next one is kind of hard to explain because I don't really know what happened. It was a couple days later, and I woke up and I went to check on Tony, and I looked outside, and there was a katana through his jar. Somebody drove a katana through Tony's jar. I rushed out. I picked up Tony. Luckily, the blade didn't hit Tony. It grazed him. That was it. He wasn't bleeding or anything. Luckily, I could only imagine who would do something like this. Somebody has it out for Tony, and I don't know who it is. A couple days go by, and I was out and about on the town, and I saw what looked like a smoke cloud, as if there was a fire. I knew. When I saw that smoke cloud, I knew. I rushed home, opened up my door, went inside. I ran to the backyard, and sure enough, it was Tony. And when they arrived and they saw what had happened, they said there was nothing they could do for him. And Tony passed away. Yeah, I remember the day where I got called in to investigate the fire. At first, I didn't know that there was actually a victim of the fire. When I got there, that was the worst thing I had ever seen. And I say that when somebody asks me, worst thing you ever seen? That's what I say. I seen that. Seen that fire back there? That was the worst. To this day, I don't know how the fire started. if somebody started it, if it was the same person who tried to murder him with a katana. I just don't know. But what I do know is that I was a very bad parent. I let him get stuck in the car. I left him outside while it rained. I left him outside when I knew that he was in danger.